I think a lot of people are getting so much information, and that's not the issue these days. We're information overload. We're drowning in information and starving for true wisdom and truth. But it's not the information that's going to change lives. It's the application of the information. If information changed lives, I always say every librarian would be a multimillionaire with six-pack abs and celebrity status. It's not the information, it's the application.
Welcome back to the Fasting Method podcast. This is Coach Terri, and I am super excited about this episode because it's something brand new for me, and I think something so worthwhile for all of our listeners. So I'm here today with Megan Ramos. We have not gotten to do an episode together in quite a while, and we are joined with a very special guest, Ben Azadi from Keto Camp. So, Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of get us rolling and tell us a little bit about Ben.
In 2008, Ben is an obese man who went through a personal health transformation of releasing 80 pounds of extra weight and getting metabolically healthy. Ever since, he has been on a mission to help 1 billion people live a healthier lifestyle, and he's on a 10-year mission to help over 1 million people naturally reverse their diabetes. Ben is the founder of Keto Camp and has over 17 years of experience in the health industry, and he's the author of 4 best-selling books. He is one of the go-to sources for intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet information since 2013. He's also the host of a top 15 podcast, the Metabolic Freedom podcast, which won Keto Podcast of the Year in 2022 by the Metabolic Health Summit. In addition to all the super cool stuff that I just shared, Ben is one of the kindest people, a dear friend of both mine, Dr. Fung, and the fasting method. And we're so grateful to support Ben with the launch of his brand new book, Metabolic Freedom, a 30-day guide to restore your metabolism, heal hormones, and burn fat. This is a book that I hope all of our listeners get. It's so complementary to what we do with fasting. And it is really a whole 360 approach that will help you restore your metabolic health. Ben, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Megan. Hey, Terri. What an honor to be here. Love what y'all are doing at the Fasting Method. And I'm excited to have a life-changing conversation.
So Ben, this book is super exciting. I remember us kind of talking about this, which felt like not that long ago. And now it's this incredible book, and I have no doubt it's going to change people's lives. What inspired you to create this particular guide?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Well, we see with our eyes that there's a lot of people that are unhealthy in the United States and in most first world countries. And the studies back it up. There were 3 key studies that I looked at that really inspired me to write the book. The first study was a 2016 study from Mayo Clinic that I put in the book. And what these researchers were set to determine was how many Americans live what they consider an active, healthy, fit lifestyle. And they essentially based it off of 4 different criteria. The first criteria was that, number 1, they don't smoke cigarettes. Number 2, they do moderate to vigorous exercise activity, about 150 minutes total per week. Number 3, they eat what they consider a healthy diet, which is simply a minimally processed diet. And number 4, their body fat percentage for a female under 30%, and for male under 20%. At the end of the study, it concluded that only 2.7% of Americans hit that criteria, hit those stats. That's it, which is such a small percentage. And, in 2018, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill put out a study showing around 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, and a more recent study in 2022 showing it's closer to 93%. It's insane. And I believe the body was not built to have all these symptoms and to manifest disease and dysfunction. I believe God created the body to be self-healing. So what's the problem, right? I wanted to outline that in the book. The first half of the book discusses the 5 main causes to metabolic dysfunction and disease. It's exactly what you and the fasting method and the entire team have been preaching for so many years. So it gets into the causes. So once we identify the interference, then we could start removing it and the body goes to heal itself. And the second half of the book are the solutions. Ketosis, fasting, we'll dive into a few of these today, but it shows them the solution. Then it's all wrapped together in a 30-day plan to achieve or to actually implement the information, because I think a lot of people are getting so much information. And that's not the issue these days. We're information overload. We're drowning in information and starving for true wisdom and truth. But it's not the information that's going to change lives. It's the application of the information. If information changed lives, I always say every librarian would be a multimillionaire with six-pack abs and celebrity status. It's not the information, it's the application. And in America, it's really crazy because every year in the United States, we spend $4.6 trillion on healthcare. That would be the fourth largest GDP in the world if it was a GDP. And what's really fascinating, this is so important to your work, Megan, Terri, and the entire team. 1 out of every $4 spent on healthcare is on diabetes, mostly type 2 diabetes, which we know is completely a lifestyle disease that is completely preventable and completely reversible, type 2. So the book illustrates exactly how to do that, and I'm excited to dive into this with y'all today.
Yeah, I love how you have the book divided into these two parts, and the outline that you provided in the solution is just so clear. And I hear you. I think Terri and I, we deal with this day in and day out. People are just so eager to try to take control of their health. I mean, the information day and age is kind of cool, right? They can learn about things about keto and fasting and hear people having really great success about it and know that there is hope. But then the information day and age, social media inundates them. Do this, do that. That's wrong. That's good. That's bad. This is clean. This is dirty. There's all of this stuff, and it just becomes overwhelming. And the more people try to learn, when they're navigating these things, different blog articles, magazine posts, social media posts, they don't even know what to do. They just end up getting like analysis paralysis. So much is contradictory. And what I love is that you've just clearly laid this out. This is the problem and this is what you do to fix it. And here's the complete guide, step-by-step guide. It's a one-stop shop for really implementing this approach. When I was going through it, I thought this is perfect for everybody, whether you're brand new to this lifestyle and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by what you're seeing online, or you've gone down the rabbit hole and you're no longer sure what to do and what you're doing is just not really working for you. This will get you back with your feet on solid ground moving forwards.
Thank you, Megan. That's exactly right. It was written for the masses. It really was. But even if you're not new to this, like if you've been following low carb, keto, carnivore, fasting for quite some time, which you probably are if you're listening to this podcast, you're still going to learn a lot because there's actually 275 scientific references that I have in the book. And that 30-day plan at the end of the book, there are 2 different avenues to follow that. If you're a complete beginner, do the beginner plan. If you're advanced, do the advanced plan, and you're going to benefit either way. And it's really a good book, I believe, to buy or recommend to somebody in your world, like a family member, a wife, a husband, a coworker, who you want to get into this low carb fasting space, but they're just so resistant because I have stories of testimonials, I have the scientific research, I have my personal story, and it's written for the masses so they could just understand, wow, keto, it's not really like this fat loss diet. It's actually a metabolic process. Wow, fasting, you're right. We're designed to go periods of time without food and then periods of time when we eat, these feast famine cycling. So it helps kind of like get them into this world without you having to force it onto them, which I'm sure you've tried. I know the message sometimes goes on deaf ears, but when you give a resource like this, I think it helps them get inspired to kind of get into our world of low carb and fasting.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Ben, because as I was reading, I was thinking of who I need to send this book to when it's launched. I'm going to set up some pre-orders now because I have friends that they're curious about what I do, but they don't really understand why I do it. And I don't want to take the time to go into that deep dive, but I thought, oh my gosh, this is the book. And what I particularly love about the book is not only do you do a lot of science in it, one, you cover the science at a level that I can manage. I'm an English major. I'm a psychologist. So it's a great degree of depth of science to really make it meaningful without being overwhelming. And then, of course, I am totally biased on the mindset piece, the power of our mind in our healing process. And I think you do a great job of incorporating that into this book. So I was very excited as I was reading.
I love it, Terri. That is actually my favorite part too. Chapter 10 is my favorite chapter in the book. And it's all about what you just said, how your thoughts influence metabolism, longevity, or disease. It gets into the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind, the self-image. It's that's my favorite chapter. I might write an entire book one day based off of chapter 10. I might call it mental freedom instead of metabolic freedom. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that's the most important part to the puzzle here is that mindset, the inner work. It's really an inside out job. So I'm glad we're on the same page there, Terri.
And it goes back to what you said earlier about if knowledge were all that it took, we'd all be so successful at this and it would be so easy, but we really also have to work on our identity and the mindset and the self-sabotage. So maybe we need to co-author that book.
Let's go. I love it.
We often talk at the fasting method that this isn't just a metabolic transformation that you're doing through nutrition and through fasting. It's a whole transformation of the self. And, not just even to your relationship with food, but it's so incredible to watch someone start this journey and take it and run with it and just see where they end up getting. I know most people come in to keto camp, come into the fasting method, and they're just so eager to get off medications, get into a good health place, get these biomarkers out of these high risk zones. And then they start to realize, oh, wait, there's a little bit more here. And I think it's really a lot of these conversations that solidify the journey and really do result in that complete transformation. I can't believe who I am today as I approach my 41st birthday. When I look back and think about where I was at the start of my journey in my late 20s, it's just kind of wild. So it's a deep process. People just think they're going to lose a few pounds and knock their metformin. You're in for it in a big way with this.
Yeah, spot on. It's an inside out job. And that's why I'm really passionate about that chapter 10, because I've seen it time after time. We make a conscious decision to change and get healthier. Maybe we have diabetes and we make that conscious decision. I want to reverse my diabetes. And like you said, Megan, get off my metformin, get off my insulin. Or you're overweight, 50 pounds overweight. You make a conscious decision. I want to lose 50 pounds. But what happens at the subconscious level will determine if you actually achieve that. You cannot outperform your self-image, the way you view yourself. And in chapter 10, I get into the concept of Psycho-Cybernetics from an author from the 1960s, Maxwell Maltz. And this is really interesting because he called it the greatest physiological discovery of his generation. And this was in the 1960s. And I think it's still, to this day, the greatest discovery. And he was a plastic surgeon. And he would work on patients that had really wicked facial disformities, and they were unhappy. They were really self-conscious. They felt like I needed to have plastic surgery so I could look better and feel better and live a normal life. That was the thought process of these patients. So they would hire Maxwell Maltz to perform plastic surgery to remove these facial disfigurements. He was one of the best in the world. But what Maxwell Maltz noticed after the surgery is that these patients, they would look in the mirror, facial disfigurements gone, and they would still see themselves with that disfigurement, meaning they were still unhappy. They were still feeling the same way they felt before. Nothing changed for them, even though they physically looked different. And it wasn't until they changed their self-image at a subconscious level that their life actually improved. And we do the same thing with our health goals and weight loss goals and diabetes. The example I give in the book is somebody who says, I need to lose 50 pounds. So they make that conscious decision. And let's say they join a program or they start cutting calories, they do it the wrong way, whatever, but they start to lose weight. And if they didn't change their self-image, if their self-image identifies as an overweight person or an obese person, like it was for me for 20 years, they might lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds that first month. But the self-image, they will course correct, meaning self-sabotage. You used that word earlier, Terri. They will self-sabotage and course correct and gain the weight back to match that self-image. They will find themselves binge eating. They would find themselves in a McDonald's drive-thru, whatever it is, to match the self-image. And they keep cutting calories more, joining another program or reading another diet book, and they lose some weight and gain it back. And they keep yo-yoing because they didn't alter the self-image. So we need to change that self-image. And once you do, then you start to make long-term progress. I know this has been the case for myself, and I talk about how do you actually change that self-image in the book. There's actually only 2 ways to do it, and I outline how to do that.
So, Ben, I could talk about changing our identity all day long, but I want to really make sure we cover some of the other aspects of this book that I think are also so powerful. I think for some of us, it's trying to understand what went wrong, why have I struggled? And one of the chapters you have is about being a sugar burner. And I think that might be a place where we could start understanding metabolically what's going on that makes us sick, makes us gain weight, makes it hard to lose weight, and then go from there.
Yeah, Terri, there's a whole chapter on why being a sugar burner is one of the leading causes towards metabolic disease. And there's nothing wrong with burning sugar and glucose unless you're only burning sugar and glucose. And the study that I referenced earlier about 93% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy, they're sugar burners. They're in a keto deficiency is what I call them. And what happens is when you're burning sugar, you're not metabolically free. You are in a metabolic prison. You're relying on snacking and grazing every few hours just to get a short energy burst. Your energy levels fluctuate. You're going to gain weight. You're going to create inflammation. And it really starts with insulin. And y'all do a great job discussing the role of insulin. Of course, Dr. Fung is the master at explaining how insulin works in the body. And I discuss insulin as a big part of the picture here because I do believe that high levels of insulin, it's the first domino to fall that will trigger a cascade of metabolic disease and dysfunction, meaning high blood pressure, weight gain, weight loss resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. And then once you're type 2 diabetic or diabetic, it opens up the door to cancer, heart disease, and other serious diseases. But what's interesting about insulin, and I love that y'all have a strong focus on it and you test it. What's interesting about insulin is that the average person could have full-blown hyperinsulinemia for, on average, 6 to 14 years is what the studies show, with their fasting blood sugar and A1C looking normal, looking just fine, because that pancreas is so busy just producing massive amounts of insulin to clear that excess glucose until those receptor sites go deaf to the screams of insulin. And then there's a steep, sharp increase in blood sugars. And if the person's testing, they'll be diagnosed with prediabetes. And if they're not testing, eventually they'll get diagnosed with full-blown diabetes. But if we just measured fasting insulin, we could have seen this happening years, a decade or so before. So a fasting insulin blood test is one of the most important tests to get done. We want to see that in the single digits. And unfortunately, and you know this, both of you know this, the standard reference range on a fasting insulin is usually between 3 and 25 or 3 and 28. So a conventional doctor might run a fasting insulin if you request it. They don't typically order it for you, but if you request it, but if you get the report back and your fasting insulin is 12, 17, 21, they're not going to flag it as being an issue, but that's an issue. You're trending in the wrong direction. And once you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, we know what happens. I mean, it's the neuropathy, the vision loss, the infections, the kidney failure. It's actually pretty rare to die from diabetes. It's what diabetes leads to that really ends the life of the person. That's what happened to my dad in 2014 with the stroke he suffered, and then it took his life. And the A1C is another important metric because it's, of course, showing you your blood sugar levels for 3 months. And there's a study that I put in the book that shows if your hemoglobin A1C is at 7.5% or higher, which is diabetes, every year it's at that level, they estimate 100 days come off your lifespan. So if it's at that level for 15 years, you lose approximately 4 years off your lifespan. That's how destructive high levels of glucose and insulin are inside of the body. So the first step is to go from burning sugar to burning fat. And the great news is that you could do that like in a week or so. It's not that difficult. I show you the steps to do that. So insulin is the key part to monitor here. And I hope your entire audience, they probably already do because they listen to y'all, get a fasting insulin. And if you don't, I really encourage you to get one as soon as possible.
We appreciate you speaking out about this because, as you mentioned, we talk about it a lot, but not a ton of experts out there are talking about it still today. There's still this focus on calories in a big way. And I'm not saying calories aren't important, but they're not the whole story. They're not the big picture. And so often, we get people that are trying to believe in the process, but everybody around them is like calories, 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 calories. And it's just like, oh my goodness, like, no, this is not the case. And then their doctors are saying, oh, you don't need to fast. You don't need to change your diet. Your A1C is 5.6%. Well, my background's in nephrology. As Jason, he's a nephrologist. And we would get all these people in their 40s with A1Cs of 5.5, 5.6. And they would have this gnarly kidney issues, and we would not know why. And their blood pressure is good. There's nothing genetic that stands out, but we biopsy them to do our due diligence, especially since they're young. They're going to have kidney disease now for a long time. Diabetic kidney disease, diabetic nephropathy every single time. I remember being just as perplexed as the patient, but I don't have diabetes. No, you technically don't. But there's obviously something going on here. And I think this is one of the biggest flags for Jason and I early on, is that these numbers are by convention considered to be normal, and they're not. And there's a lot more going on here. Your point about the insulin, we had one incredible fasting method family member who had to insist, wanted to prove to her doctor that she had insulin resistance, even with her quote unquote normal A1C and fasting glucose levels. So she ended up doing a Kraft test. For our listeners out there, that's like an oral glucose tolerance test over 4 hours, but you also measure your fasting insulin. Her fasting insulin levels were some of the highest I had ever seen in that point. Every single marker, just sky high. They happen high earlier on, which is usually type 2 diabetes. We see it be delayed a bit, but every single marker sky high. So her glucose levels were actually all kind of in a pretty healthy range. And her doctor was floored and just did not know what to do with this data, and then asked if she could reach out to us to learn more, because she said she would have bet everything she owned that this woman did not have metabolic disease. How wild is that? How people just do not understand insulin out there. So it's so important that you're speaking about this. And I know a lot of people listening feel frustrated. These are some big changes, but they're not huge change. They are big changes, but some small changes can get you a long way. So as we start to sort of shift into some of the solution aspect, 30 days can change your life. I 100% have seen this a million times. It's changed my life. And there's some simple things, people can do to, if they're feeling overwhelmed in this moment, this is a big dietary change for them, that you really say, hey, no, this is actually not overcomplicated. This is something that if I can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah, 100%. That's a story about the fasting insulin, the Kraft test. It's wild. It's beyond me. I mean, I understand why doctors are not ordering a fasting insulin. There's no medication they could prescribe for it, right? There's not a medication to lower insulin. There's a medication to lower glucose. There's not an incentive to really do it. The good news about a fasting insulin is, though, if your doctor does not want to order it for you, or if your insurance doesn't want to cover it, which it typically doesn't, it's a very cheap test. You get it done. You can pay out of pocket. It's not that expensive, but it's very valuable. The solution is very easy. And Megan, you're really brilliant at discussing how snacking is going to raise insulin and glucose. And that's just simple tip, just have 3 meals a day. So we'll start there. And I talk about that in the first week of this 30-day plan. Just start with 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, no snacking in between. And the second change here is to gradually start to lower your total carbohydrate intake, which we know carbs will raise blood insulin more than any other macronutrient. So you want to gradually lower your total carbohydrate intake while you replace that with proteins and fats. Protein has a moderate insulin response, and fat, very, very minimal, not much going on with fat. So as you swap out carbs, let's say you start reducing rice and pasta and beans and lentils and grains, and you swap that out with eggs, avocado, chicken, fish, beef, whatever your favorite protein sources with natural fats, and maybe coconut oil, butter you use to cook your foods in. You make that swap and no snacking in between those meals. Your body's going to start to lower glucose and insulin, lower inflammation, and it's going to start to shift now into going into a fat burning mode. If your goal is to achieve ketosis, which I do recommend in the book, the goal is to eventually take those total carbohydrates, which for most people, the average person eats around 250 grams of carbs per day. If your goal is to shift into ketosis, I would say by day 7 of doing this, you should eventually get to a point where your total carbohydrates are now under 50 total grams per day. And that needs to come from non-starchy carbohydrates. Now, some people need to go a little bit more restrictive, but I would say 50 as the upper limit. No snacking in between, getting plenty of protein and fat. And within a week of just doing this, which is part of the 7-day plan, the first 7 days in the 30-day plan, is you're now shifting into a fat burning mode. You're going to have more energy, less inflammation. And it does not require a whole bunch of changes, to your point. It's small little tweaks that gain some momentum, and then you move into the next week and add some different tweaks and kind of go from there.
One of my favorite takeaways from the book, Ben, is in talking about your own journey, you talked about an approach that you had of one tweak a week. Because I think sometimes we are so overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, there is a solution, but it's so complicated. There's no way I could possibly do it. And I love how you framed that of make one change, get good at that change, make another change. There's a progression. You don't have to do it all at once. And trying to do it all at once often really backfires on us. So one tweak a week was one of my fun takeaways.
I love it. Yeah, that's the philosophy, right? One tweak a week, get some momentum, stack another behavior to that. And it could be a couple tweaks a week as well, but you just want to get some momentum and then build from there. I think a lot of the time we get so excited. We hear about something, whether it's like fasting or ketosis or the carnivore diet, and we go all in. And we have to remember we've done for many years the opposite. And it could be a dramatic shift and change to your entire metabolism and body. And all of a sudden, you're symptomatic, you're suffering, you're relying on willpower, which is why the old calories in versus calories out method is so difficult, because it's like you're depriving yourself, relying on willpower. It's just not fun. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be easy. It could be really simple. You just have to understand, what are those tweaks? All right, let's make them, adjust them. We mastered that this week. All right, let's add a different tweak and kind of go from there. So it works really well. It worked for me personally, and it works for a lot of my students.
I love that you talk about some other variables that can be leading to metabolic dysfunction that I literally have not seen in a book out there. I know we haven't talked about it at all. Some of these things that you talk about are things that actually brought us together and brought us closer. I learned a thing or two about nutrition. I learned a lot about insulin. I learned how to help people fast and have a lot of success in those areas. And then just kind of was like, cool, I can give a lot of people their lives back. And the book kind of stopped there. Or the continuing education, went into learning more about fats, learning more about proteins, learning more about metabolic health. And then in 2019, I almost died from mold toxicity, and I was at a loss. I did not know what to do. My whole life was falling apart. I was pretty certain I wasn't going to see the end of the year. And I thought I was doing everything right. Like, I thought I was almost invincible to anything in the world at that point because of what I knew about nutrition and fasting and hormones, and that nothing could stop me. And then I got stopped. I was this New York Times best-selling person on the subject, and I couldn't even get myself to fast. I was that sick. So I sent out an SOS message to you. I had shared that we had recently learned that there was some mold in our house that I couldn't see. So when we had our house initially inspected, there was no black mold anywhere, not a spot of it. But there was all this other mycotoxins and mold and things in the house. And I had no idea what to do. This was a whole new can of worms for me. And you really helped provide me with a lot of guidance and information on that. But I don't think people think about the other environmental toxins and other things in their life. And I know this has been a big part of your journey, as you share in the book and have shared so much online. Do you want to speak to any of that, Ben?
Of course. Yeah. I'm glad you're doing much better. Mold is a serious thing. I've also experienced mold illness, not to as severe as it was for you, but it really debilitated me with chronic fatigue and weight gain. I just felt awful. And it's a big problem these days. It's a hidden problem, not just the mold, but environmental toxins in general. That's why, to your point, Megan, I wrote a whole chapter on it, chapter 5, which is all about how environmental toxins contribute to metabolic disease and dysfunction. There are 2 classifications of toxins that I outline in that chapter. Obesogens, which mold could be in that classification, heavy metals, for example. Obesogens are these toxins that they enter the body, and they're coming from everywhere, by the way. We live in a very toxic world than ever before. So yeah, it's mycotoxins from hidden mold, maybe glyphosate in the food. It's heavy metals and fluoride in tap water. It's toxins in the air, in the food supply, and our cleaning supplies. It's everywhere. So when these toxins enter the body, whether we're eating it, breathing it, putting it on our skin, the body wants to survive. It's the number one priority for the human body is survival. So what it does, it activates a pathway called PPAR gamma. And PPAR gamma is interesting because it kind of acts similar to insulin, meaning PPAR gamma's job is to now clear those toxins out of the bloodstream. Remember, survival is the number one priority. I don't want those toxins to float around and enter vital organs. So PPAR gamma shuttles those toxins into our adipocytes, our fat cells. They're lipophilic, they're fat-loving toxins. And the reason the body does this is because the solution to pollution is dilution. We could dilute these toxins by putting them into our fat cells where there's a lot of room. And hey, if there's not enough room in your fat cells, your innate intelligence will increase the size of your fat cells. And hey, if that runs out of room, it'll create new fat cells. And that's how these obesogens make us overweight and obese. They're toxins. And I'll give some simple things the audience can do in a second. But the next classification of toxins are a new classification, Megan, which are called diabetogens. And diabetogens are toxins that specifically disrupt beta cell function in the pancreas, triggering prediabetes and diabetes. And I found a study, which is so fascinating, that showed around 33% of these diabetic cases are from these diabetogens, this high toxicity load that we're getting all over the place. So what can we do, right? It's not all doom and gloom. I talk about the importance of keeping your downstream detox pathways open. Your downstream detox pathways, your gut, your liver, your kidney, your colon, your lymphatic system. So there's many things you can do. Just getting healthy by eating a clean diet and eating organic as much as possible will help. But there's some simple things you can do right now. I make the case, I talk about microplastics and how these microplastics are showing up in men's testicles and our arteries, like they're everywhere. So some simple things we can do is, as much as possible, drink out of glass water bottles instead of plastic water bottles, as much as possible. If you're using plastic Tupperware, I recommend switching to glass Tupperware. If you're using plastic cutting board in your kitchen, switch to a wooden cutting board, because a plastic cutting board will leach a lot of these microplastics into your food, but a wooden cutting board is safe. BPA is one of those toxins as well that we think of like canned food. Make sure it's BPA free, but there's a study I put in the book that shows cash register receipts contain 1,000 times greater BPA than canned food, meaning when they offer you your receipt at the grocery store, say no thank you. Do not touch that, or grab a napkin and grab it, but don't put it in your pocket, because if you put your hands in there, it'll go into your bloodstream. And the thing about plastics, there's a study from the University of Newcastle, and it showed the average American consumes a credit card size worth of plastic every single week, which is absolutely crazy. So keep the detox pathways open. I would explore, what Megan went through and I went through. I would explore mold toxicity as being a probable cause to why you don't feel well. I also had mercury poisoning from silver amalgam fillings. So if you're listening to this and you have silver amalgam fillings, about 55% of every filling contains mercury, which is a super toxin. So I had 8 of them for 20 plus years, leaching mercury into my hypothalamus pituitary, which controls my entire endocrine system. So I would recommend finding a holistic dentist, or also called biological dentist, that performs safe amalgam removal, and kind of going from there. So it is important, and that's why I wrote an entire chapter about it in the book.
That's all really fascinating, Ben. And I'm just sitting here nodding my head the whole time you're talking. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the whole creating metabolic flexibility and metabolic freedom. And obviously that's part of how your plan is created, is to help us achieve these things. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the whole metabolism piece of this.
I would love to. It's really, really interesting and exciting to chat about. When we think about the metabolism, I hear so many people say, and I'm sure y'all have heard it as well, I have a slow metabolism. I want to speed up my metabolism. Or even things like, hey, I'm gaining weight because I'm turning 50 and my metabolism slows down I feels like it slows down every year. But when I dug into the research, I discovered that the metabolism doesn't necessarily even work in speeds. It's either efficient or inefficient. And we don't necessarily want to boost our metabolism or increase the speed of our metabolism. Animals in the wild, in the kingdom, in the wildlife, the animals that have the fastest metabolism have the shortest lifespan. So it's not really about doing that as well. It's about creating a flexible, metabolically free metabolism. And what else is interesting, there's a study I published in the book from Duke, 2021, that looked at over 8,000 people, I think over 10,000 people possibly, but from ages 1 to 95, crazy. They were looking at changes in metabolic rate and metabolism throughout our lifespan. And what the study showed is that our metabolisms do not have any significant changes between the ages 20 and 60. It's pretty much the same between ages 20 and 60. Then at age 60, our metabolism starts to decrease in efficiency about 0.7% every year after age 60. And you might think, well, that's bad news if I'm listening to this and I'm over the age of 60. But here's what the study said. The only reason the metabolism starts to have this decrease after age 60 is loss of muscle mass. So if you build lean muscle mass, preserve lean muscle mass by age 60, or even in your 60s and 70s, you could essentially be 85 years old with the same metabolism as when you were 25 years old. And that's really exciting. And you could do that with a low carb approach, a keto approach. You could do it with having some days with high protein and then no protein, feast, famine cycling, a lot of the things you learn at the fasting method. These are ways to create a metabolically free metabolism where you're able to go without food for hours, or in some cases days, and feel incredible, actually have more energy. It's inspiring to me because it debunks a lot of myths around the metabolism. We're not trying to speed it up. We're not trying to fix a slow metabolism. We're trying to create a metabolically free metabolism. And it's very easy to do as long as you have the combination to the code, and the book gives you the keys to the kingdom here.
One of those keys is fasting. So it's a fasting method podcast. We've got to talk about fasting. Ben, fasting.
Yeah. What a great transition, Megan. I like that. One of those keys is fasting. It's actually a very important key to unlock that metabolic freedom. I mean, I've learned so much about fasting from you, Megan, and Dr. Fung over the years, and of course, Dr. Pompa, my mentor. And fasting is my favorite way to harness the innate intelligence within the body. It's really, really incredible. I think a lot of people are starting to become really fascinated, no pun intended, with fasting. And I say that because just the other day, 6 days ago, I posted an Instagram reel on what happens in your body when you go without food for 100 hours. It's like a 90-second video, and I just kind of give a timeline. And it's got over 10 million views in 6 days. It's insane. And it shows me that people are like, they're hungry. They want to learn about this stuff. And it goes against what most people think you can do. Most people don't even believe you could go without food for 100 hours, let alone 100 days or even more. Some people have done that, right? But fasting removes the interference. We know it takes a lot of energy, blood flow, bandwidth to digest food, an extraordinary amount of energy. So if you're constantly digesting food, you're taking resources away from the brain, your liver, other areas that need healing. But when you go into a fasted state where you just have water, you start to create this energy diversion process where you divert energy away from digestion to healing. And your inner physician, the innate intelligence, will direct that wherever it needs to go. So that might be, okay, let's divert energy and blood flow to the brain because Ben's doing a lot of podcasts today and he's speaking on stage or whatever it is, or maybe for you to have energy for your family, and whatever it is, you'll get that energy and those resources because you're not using it for digestion. And we know what it does to lower inflammation, to lower insulin. We know the New England Journal of Medicine put out a study in 2019 showing it should be like the first thing we all use for these metabolic diseases. It's not taboo. It's not woo-woo. You and Dr. Fung have been preaching this before it became mainstream. Thank God there's research to back it up. So it is such an important piece to the puzzle, fasting, but it is a muscle. You got to build it up the right way. It is a stress. Doesn't mean it's bad for you. It could be what's called a hormetic stress. You just have to use this tool the right way. And you guys teach that really brilliantly.
Oh, so do you, Ben. I've always learned something listening to you, and I appreciate that so many of our fasting method family members also really benefit from participating in keto camp as well. And together it creates a full picture of information and strategies to really help people overcome this. But fasting is a pretty incredible tool at that. But there's so many incredible tools in this book. I really hope everybody goes out, gets this book, gets it for your friends. I have a whole slew of new mom friends. They're all struggling with metabolic dysfunction right now. And they kind of know me because I've done some Googling, but I sound crazy, right? Like you hear me saying like fast for 42 hours. Oh, 5 days. Sure, go for it. You hear me say these things. So they're not quite sure if I'm insane or if I'm onto something. But this book is just the perfect guide. It's completely well researched. This is something you could give to anybody, and just the number of references from it. It's just like the obesity code. No one can dispute it. I remember giving my new husband, who was still skeptical a little bit about this, a copy of the obesity code. And he's like, this is just so well researched. You can't dispute it. It just speaks for itself. And it's just so much of the same here, but a really practical solution. You get the information, it's really digestible, as Terri said, and then actionable steps and a whole plan laid out for you to really succeed, and simple. Just to circle back to some of these environmental stuff, I know it can sound a little overwhelming. Ben gave 5-10 good examples of little things that you can do. Those little things radically transformed my life once I removed myself from the mold. It is amazing. These little things go a long way, and Ben unpacks it all in the most easy to digest form in this book. Ben, I know you've got some exciting stuff happening around this book where people can participate and learn even more. Do you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the kind words there, Megan. Yeah, we have a special opportunity, or a gift, I should say, for those who order the book this week. We have an entire course that I built out on the metabolism, 12 lessons. There's a couple lessons on keto fasting and just how the metabolism works, why calories in versus calories out. It's not the full picture. So 12 lessons on the metabolism. And we have some exclusive interviews in that course as well with the amazing Megan Ramos. We did a deep dive into metabolic freedom together. This is an interview you cannot find anywhere else, but only in this course. Dr. Jason Fung, we also did an interview with him in this course. Cynthia Thurlow, who I know is a dear friend as well, and Dr. Daniel Pompa. So all of these interviews and the entire course we're going to give to you for free. All you need to do is go to metabolicfreedombook.com. What you'll see on that page is links to purchase the book. We have Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, wherever you want to get it, Audible, Spotify. It's available on hardcover, Kindle, and Audible. I narrated the Audible myself as well, which was a pain in the butt. So you buy the book on that page, and then you simply just go back to the page, and then there's a step 2, which shows your order form. So you just put your name, your email, and then you grab the order number from that purchase, and you hit submit. And as soon as you do that, you're going to be emailed the course with the interviews. You get the course and the interviews right away. So I'd love for you to go to metabolicfreedombook.com, pre-order the book or order the book, and get the entire course with the interviews for free.
What an amazing way to begin your journey to metabolic freedom, or tighten things up, get back on track, get your feet on the ground. So many great resources. Thank you, Ben, for helping spread the word, spread the great message, everything you do. I love it. I love connecting with you anytime we have a chance. So grateful you got to meet the incredible Dr. Lance today as well.
I'm grateful too, Terri. It's been a pleasure knowing you, and I'm grateful for both of you. Thank you for the opportunity to come share with your community. I know this is not something you do often with outsiders on your podcast, so I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
And as Megan said earlier, thank you for the 360 approach. This is like all-inclusive, everything in one place at a very consumable level. So thank you for all of your work. I can't wait for everyone to start benefiting from this book.
Thank you so much, Terri. Appreciate you both so much.
All right, listeners out there, we will have all the links Ben shared. You can register for his course, the links for the book, links for Keto Camp. We will have them all in the show notes. And hopefully, Ben, we'll get a little bit more practice at interviewing. We'd love to have you back often.
I would love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much today, and everyone listening, happy fasting.
Happy fasting.